The sun over Colorado Springs burned bright against the sky so blue it almost looked artificial. Commander Threx of the Ksath Dominion stood rigid in the Academy's parade grounds, mandibles clenched tight, his dark carapace glinting like obsidian under the daylight. Around him, human soldiers stood in immaculate formation, the red and black banners of the Interstellar Command Academy snapping in the wind. Brass instruments thundered, echoing across the open courtyard. To the humans, it was ceremony. To Threx, it was noise. He had visited dozens of military institutions across the Concord. They were orderly, efficient, and quiet, like a scalpel drawn across flesh. This place felt different. He watched cadets stand at attention, sweat already beading on their foreheads under the punishing sun, yet not a single one shifted or faltered. There was something unnerving about the way their eyes followed him, steady, unblinking, as though they were measuring him. The Academy's commandant stepped forward and gave the formal greeting. "Commander Threx, welcome to the North American Interstellar Command Academy. It is our honor to show you how humanity prepares its officers." Threx inclined his head, the gesture stiff. "Honor acknowledged," he replied, his voice metallic and cold. He already expected little from this tour. Humanity was young, barely a century beyond their own planet. They were ambitious, yes, but raw. The Concord was cautious about them for good reason. A primitive species with weapons too sharp and a history soaked in its own blood. His escort was introduced, Cadet Marcus Hale. The young man stepped forward, uniform sharp, eyes alert but not deferential. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his expression calm with a trace of curiosity. He extended a hand, palm open in human greeting. Threx glanced at it with faint distaste before inclining his head instead. "I'll be guiding you today, Commander," Marcus said, his tone professional yet steady. "If there's anything you wish to examine in greater detail, please let me know." "You will show me what is required," Threx said. "No more, no less." Marcus gave a polite nod. "Understood." The tour began within the Academy's main hall, its vaulted ceilings decorated with banners from Earth's long history. Statues of generals stood beside holographic displays showing battles from centuries past, ancient wars fought with crude weapons, and more recent conflicts fought across space. Threx's mandibles clicked softly as he studied the exhibits. "You preserve such trophies. Do you worship violence?" Marcus glanced at the towering statue of a World War II soldier, helmet tucked beneath his arm. "We don't worship it. We remember it. Every war changed us. Every conflict taught us how to adapt. Adaptation through slaughter," Threx said. His voice was flat, but his antennae twitched with disdain. "A civilization that defines itself by conflict rarely survives long." Marcus's gaze sharpened, though his words remained measured. "And yet, Commander, we did survive. We're here speaking to you now because we refused to vanish." Threx did not reply immediately. In his experience, species that embraced war consumed themselves quickly. Yet humanity had not. They had fought endlessly, and grown stronger from it. The thought irritated him. They passed the holographic diorama of Earth's first colony war, where outnumbered human settlers had held against a technologically superior adversary. The figures in the simulation showed soldiers digging trenches, improvising weapons, and fighting until their outposts stood in ruins but unbroken. "You call this victory?" Threx asked. "Your people lost thousands." Marcus studied the hologram quietly for a moment before answering. "We call it survival. That's always been enough to start with." The next chamber displayed tactical archives. Holographic maps floated above the floor, showing battles where humanity had been outgunned, yet managed to turn the tide through unconventional tactics. Threx observed a simulation where human fleets split apart, scattering into asteroid fields rather than confronting the enemy head-on. "That is not strategy," Threx said with sharp finality. "That is chaos." Marcus allowed a faint smile. "Sometimes chaos is the only strategy that works. The universe doesn't fight fair. Neither can we." Threx narrowed his eyes. In the Dominion, strategy was precision, efficiency, predictable lines of engagement. The idea that chaos itself could be trained unsettled him. As they moved deeper into the academy, Marcus remained steady, never faltering under Threx's probing questions. There was no arrogance in his voice, only quiet conviction. That disturbed Threx more than boastfulness would have. Humans were not posturing, they believed what they said. At the end of the hall, the commandant excused himself, leaving Marcus to continue the tour alone. "From here," Marcus said, his tone lowering slightly as though sharing something important, "we'll enter the training grounds. The academy shows its real lessons there, not in history halls." Threx's antennae twitched again. He had expected more lectures, perhaps another room of outdated relics. Instead, there was a note in Marcus's voice, something between pride and warning. "Very well," Threx said. "Show me what you believe makes humanity so exceptional." Marcus opened a reinforced door and gestured for the alien to follow. "Be careful, Commander. You may find what you see unsettling." Threx stepped through into glaring sunlight again. Before him sprawled the Academy's outdoor training fields, vast stretches of earth broken into obstacle courses, climbing towers, and combat pits. He heard the sharp bark of instructors and the thunder of boots as cadets hurled themselves through punishing exercises. For the first time that day, Threx felt the faintest trace of unease. He saw a young cadet running under triple gravity, each step like dragging mountains, yet the boy kept moving until his legs gave out. He collapsed face first into the dirt. Threx expected the instructors to pull him away, but instead, they shouted for him to rise. The boy crawled, gasping, dragging himself forward inch by inch, refusing to quit. Threx's mandibles parted slightly. In the Concord, training never pushed cadets beyond their biological limits. It was inefficient, wasteful, dangerous. But here, the humans seemed to demand it. "Why risk permanent damage?" Threx asked, his voice tight. Marcus didn't look away from the crawling cadet. "Because real war won't wait for weakness. We'd rather break here than break when it matters." Threx turned to him sharply. "You call this preparation? I call it brutality." Marcus's eyes remained steady. "Sometimes they're the same thing." The alien commander studied the field again. Cadets bled, strained, collapsed, but not one stayed down. Each pushed further, each endured. It was not efficiency. It was not precision. It was something stranger, and far more dangerous. For the first time, Threx wondered if perhaps this inspection would not be so simple after all. The reinforced gate clanged shut behind them, sealing away the quiet dignity of the academy halls. Out here, discipline wore a harsher face. Dust clung to the air, heavy with sweat and the metallic tang of blood. Cadets moved in swarms across vast training fields, their shouts echoing against the mountains beyond. Commander Threx's compound eyes swept the grounds. He saw no order, no polished precision, only chaos. Groups of cadets ran through obstacle courses designed to maim, climbing sheer walls while instructors fired stun rounds at them from above. Others slogged through a mud trench filled with razor wire coils that left welts across exposed skin. Marcus gestured to the nearest course. "Physical endurance trials. They run them daily." Threx folded his arms. "Daily? You break them every morning just to rebuild them at night?" Marcus's mouth curved faintly. "You'll see they don't stay broken for long." One cadet stumbled under a weighted pack, knees trembling. He collapsed hard into the dirt. Threx expected the exercise to halt. Instead, the surrounding squad surged around him, screaming at him to rise. The cadet clawed at the earth, teeth bared, hauling himself forward on trembling arms. The others didn't lift him, they didn't slow down. They demanded he drag himself to the finish. Threx's mandibles twitched in disbelief. "You allow this abuse?" "We require it," Marcus said. His voice was calm, not cruel. "If his squad lifts him now, he learns weakness is forgiven. If he crawls and makes it on his own, he learns he can endure more than he thought possible." The cadet crossed the finish line moments later, collapsing flat on his back. The squad finally swarmed him, not to scold, but to cheer. Threx looked away, unsettled. They moved on to the tactical dome, a sphere of shimmering light enclosing a simulation chamber. Inside, cadets stood ready in combat rigs as holographic landscapes bloomed around them: jungles, cities, asteroid belts. Marcus led Threx to the observation deck. Scenario: outnumbered 3-1, with inferior firepower, Marcus explained. The battle began. Alien war machines flooded the field, towering metal figures with plasma cannons. Human cadets didn't meet them head-on. They split apart, vanishing into jungle cover. One squad laid traps, another feigned retreat, another hijacked enemy drones and turned them against their masters. Threx's voice rasped low. They scatter like vermin. They adapt like predators, Marcus corrected. Within minutes, the simulation shifted. Enemy machines toppled into hidden pits, their systems fried by improvised charges. A cadet unit officially destroyed detonated their own harnesses to overload the battlefield sensors, blinding the enemy long enough for the survivors to strike. Threx stiffened. You train them to die in simulation? Marcus turned his gaze toward him. Better to die here and learn the cost than hesitate in reality. Every choice has weight. Threx's antennae curled in distaste. Sacrifice was a last resort in his doctrine, not a lesson taught to recruits. The humans normalized it, almost embraced it. The simulation ended with the cadets standing over the wreckage of their outnumbered foe. The scoreboard blinked, victory achieved. Chaotic, Threx muttered again. Effective, Marcus replied. From the tactical dome, Marcus led him to a vast enclosed structure, the survival biomes. As the heavy doors parted, the air shifted, dry heat lashing across Threx's carapace. Inside sprawled a desert wasteland under simulated twin suns. Cadets trudged through the sand with cracked lips and blistered skin, carrying minimal supplies. Each squad rotates through every environment, Marcus explained. Desert, tundra, toxic swamp, irradiated wasteland. Food and water are rationed. Shelter isn't provided. Threx's compound eyes narrowed. This is cruelty. You strip them of necessities to prove a point. Marcus's jaw tightened. We strip them of comforts so they learn how to survive when nothing is given. Our enemies won't hand them water, Commander. Neither will a frozen moon or a burning sun. They watched a cadet squad halt at a dune crest. One member faltered, knees buckling. The others didn't carry him. They forced him to walk, supporting him just enough that he still moved under his own strength. Together they stumbled onward. Threx exhaled through his spiracles, a slow rasp. How many die in this training? Marcus shook his head. None. Pain, exhaustion, hunger, yes. Death, no. We know the line. But we walk close enough to remind them where it is. The desert shifted suddenly to frozen tundra, the heat replaced by biting cold. Cadets in frost-crusted uniforms marched across ice sheets. One cut his palm on jagged stone and kept moving, blood freezing on his glove. Threx stared in disbelief. You call this teaching? They should have broken already. Marcus's eyes tracked the trudging figures. That's the lesson, Commander. They don't? The last stop that day was the Endurance Gauntlet, a nightmarish obstacle course under simulated combat stress. Strobes flashed, alarms wailed, and mechanical turrets fired stun rounds at cadets as they sprinted through razor-wire corridors. A cadet took a round in the chest and fell. Two more dragged him to cover, one shielding him with their own body while the other returned fire with training weapons. They reached the extraction point battered, bruised, and half-conscious. The instructor called time. The cadets collapsed in a heap, laughing breathlessly despite bleeding scrapes across their skin. Threx could not contain his incredulity. They laugh? Marcus allowed himself the barest hint of a smile. They laugh because they made it through. Pain isn't the end of the story. For us, it's proof the story continues. Threx turned sharply, his mandibles clacking. This is madness. Every moment I watch convinces me more. You cultivate savagery. Marcus's expression hardened. You see madness. We see preparation. Out there, he pointed skyward, toward the endless black of space. No one cares how civilized we claim to be. They'll test us in ways polite doctrine can't imagine. Better to bleed here than vanish out there. For the first time since his arrival, Threx didn't have an immediate retort. His mind was too busy replaying what he'd seen: the cadet crawling under crushing gravity, the squad detonating themselves to blind an enemy, the laughter of soldiers who had just been broken and still rose again. He had inspected dozens of militaries across the stars. None trained like this. None dared to. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, long shadows stretched across the training grounds. The cadets stood ready for another round, even after a full day of punishment. Their voices carried on the wind, hoarse, ragged, but strong. Threx's second heart beat faster, a thrum of unease echoing in his chest. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps the Concorde's greatest mistake had not been in fearing human weakness, but in underestimating human strength. The next morning dawned gray, clouds rolling low over the mountains. Commander Threx followed Marcus Hale through the Academy's final wing in silence. The alien had spoken little since the day before. His antennae twitched with agitation, betraying thoughts he did not share. Marcus led him to a heavy blast door guarded by 2 armored instructors. "This is the psychological conditioning chamber," he said. "It's where we test not just endurance, but decision-making under pressure." The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a cavernous hall filled with partitioned rooms. Behind glass panels, cadets sat in simulators while lights strobed and alarms blared. Artificial smoke hissed across the floors. The sound of civilians crying played from speakers. Threx's mandibles parted slightly. "You assault their senses like this?" Marcus folded his hands behind his back. "We overload them. Fear, noise, confusion. Everything they'll face when the field turns against them." One simulator showed a cadet forced to choose between saving 2 comrades pinned under debris or intercepting an advancing enemy drone. He hesitated, then abandoned the trapped pair to complete the mission objective. The scenario ended with his teammates' vitals going flat. Threx's eyes narrowed. "You make them kill their own in simulation." Marcus's voice remained steady. "We teach them choices cost lives. Better they understand it here than freeze when the real moment comes." Another chamber showed a cadet sitting calm under flashing lights and screeching alarms. Sweat rolled down his face, but his hands never trembled as he completed system overrides. "They don't break," Threx muttered, almost to himself. Marcus's answer was quiet but certain. "That's the point." From there, they crossed to the wargaming arena, a coliseum beneath a dome of reinforced glass. Rows of cadets filled the stands, watching as squads prepared for the final exercise. "This is our culminating test," Marcus explained. "Cadets against Concorde standard war machines. Fully autonomous, programmed for efficiency and ruthlessness." Threx's brow ridges furrowed. "Machines built for war? Against recruits?" Marcus's eyes didn't leave the arena floor. "Against humans." The gates opened. 10 towering drones marched onto the battlefield, plated in gleaming alloy, weapons systems humming. Opposite them, 30 cadets readied themselves, their equipment crude by comparison: rifles, jammers, a handful of explosives. The signal sounded. Immediately, the cadets split apart, scattering across the terrain. Some vanished into cover, others drew fire, still others worked in pairs to lay improvised charges. The drones advanced in perfect formation, precise and unstoppable. Plasma fire lit the air. One cadet went down, armor sizzling. His squad didn't falter. They grabbed his pack, stripped it for useful gear, and pressed on without hesitation. Threx's mandibles clicked in alarm. "They leave him? Just like that?" Marcus's tone was even. "He gave them what they needed. His fight continues through them." The cadets used every scrap of the battlefield. They hacked into drones with jury-rigged devices, sabotaged power conduits, and triggered chain reactions with stolen munitions. A trio deliberately drew the machines into a dead end, sacrificing themselves in a controlled detonation that crippled half the enemy force. Threx leaned forward, claws tightening against the railing. "They throw lives away as if they mean nothing." Marcus turned to him, eyes steady. No. They spend them as if they mean everything. The last drone collapsed in a fireball. Survivors, bruised, burned, but standing, raised their rifles in grim triumph. The stands erupted with shouts, cadets pounding the rails, voices raw with pride. The arena fell silent in Threx's mind. He no longer saw drills or exercises. He saw a species preparing, methodically, to fight enemies stronger than themselves. Preparing to fight beings like him. As they left the dome, Threx broke his silence. Why train to fight the unstoppable? Why craft warriors who embrace death so easily? Marcus paused, meeting his compound eyes. Because one day, the unstoppable will try us. And we intend to win. The words hung in the air, heavy with certainty. Threx felt an involuntary shiver crawl down his limbs. The departure ceremony that evening was far quieter than the grand welcome. Threx stood alone on the shuttle platform, watching cadets march in formation one last time. Their movements were imperfect, not the clean precision he expected from soldiers. Yet there was something else in them, an unpredictable energy, a refusal to bend. He realized with a cold weight in his chest that his initial assessment had been wrong. Humanity was not a primitive culture clinging to violent traditions. They were something older, deeper. A predator species that had learned to weaponize survival itself. The shuttle doors opened. Before boarding, Threx turned to Marcus, who had accompanied him to the end. You speak with conviction, Cadet Hale. Do you truly believe what you've shown me today? Marcus gave the smallest of smiles. I don't need to believe it, Commander. I've lived it. Threx studied him for a long moment, then boarded without another word. Hours later, in the sterile silence of his quarters aboard the Concorde vessel, Threx composed his report. His claws hovered over the console, mandibles twitching as he considered his words. The Council expected confirmation of their biases, that humans were unstable, dangerous, unfit for integration. But what he had seen would not let him write those words. Finally, he keyed in his message. Humanity is not prepared for war in the Concorde. Humanity is war. Their endurance defies reason, their strategies embrace chaos, and their will to survive consumes pain itself. They are a species that refuses to surrender, no matter the cost. To underestimate them is to invite extinction. He hesitated only once before transmitting. The truth had to be told. As the message vanished into the ether of space, Threx leaned back, both hearts pounding. For the first time in a century of service, he felt something close to fear. Not fear of failure, nor of dishonor. Fear of what humanity might become once the galaxy pushed them hard enough to reveal their full strength.